Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Counselor's Office. I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor, and happy Valentine's, you fat losers. I'm joking. You're all wonderful people. Scholars, we're talking Destiny. We're talking Destiny. We're talking about the Sundered Doctrine weapons and whether they're worth it. So spoiler, they're probably some of the most mid weapons you will ever see. And it's not just me. There's a lot of veterans out there who think the same thing. These weapons are pretty fucking mid, which is really disappointing. After the banger of Vesper's Host, I feel like we're going back to Warlord's Ruin, except for In-Depth Kindness, which is amazing. But everything else from that dungeon was just garbage. In fact, I feel like we have like a good dungeon with good weapons, and then we have a bad dungeon with bad weapons. I think the last time we had a good set of weapons besides Vesper was essentially Ghost of the Deep. It had like a bunch of bangers, a great rocket launcher. If you love glaives, there was a decent glaive combo. The SMG for PvP was just nasty. Like, yeah. Now we're talking about Sundered Doctrine. Now I'm going to tell you right now, I got that out of the way. The plot twist that these weapons are very mid and not good. I like to look at weapons based on, can they hang in in-game content, master, grandmaster content? Because that's where I live usually, or in general. And here's the bottom dollar. I know people get upset, like they don't like meta chasing. But in a game where we are limited in space, yes, I'm going to meta chase. Why the fuck would I waste space for just generic trash weapons? Or weapons like, why do I care about patrol space weapons when I can use green and blue weapons to get the same effect? And so, yes, there is a lot of fun weapons that are ignored, but that's because we live in a game where you can't store fun weapons and good weapons without having to make sacrifices. So when I make this run through, just know I'm going through a in-game guide. I'm looking at it from an in-game lens, and I'm also helping people who may not have a lot of freaking space in their vault. So don't get mad that I'm chasing the meta. Of fucking course I am. Play any other MMO, guess what? You're gonna chase the meta. You're not going to use garbage. You're going to use the best case scenario. Even Borderlands, the best case scenario. Like, let's live out this fantasy where people aren't upgrading the best gear in any fucking video game. I'm just saying that because it's really annoying that people are like, really get upset that I encourage the meta. Yes, that's kind of what you do in any video game. You go for what's best to get the easiest and the best results. Yes, that's how video games work. Unless you want to play like Dark Souls and you go like a no skin glass cannon build or whatever, right? You play how you want to play, but I'm going to tell you where it's actually worth it. Even though you may have fun with it, doesn't equal good. Fun doesn't equal good. And so I just want to put that out there. Talking about fun doesn't equal good, unworthy. Well, before we talk about unworthy, let's talk about the origin trait. The origin trait is a banger. Weak targets, shots explode. Strong targets become exhausted. Guardians flinch, resistance increases. Exhausted targets deal reduced outgoing damage. So essentially, it's like what the Sever that does that too. I always get I think it's Sever. Yeah. Anyways, really cool origin trait. The weapons are mid as fuck. Now, except for maybe possibly hand cannon, but even then I'm like, meh, whatever. So let's look at this. This is probably one of the first ARC scouts, rapid fires in general that we've had in a long time. I'm trying to think. What is it that, it's a Vice weapon. Contingency plan. That was the last scout we had, and that was like years ago. But here we are with a rapid fire ARC. Let's be honest. For utility, if you need an ARC scout, this is probably going to fit your bill, especially with the origin trait. It's not bad. Like, you have some classics. You could go for Firefly for your generic trash, and then Volt Shot, and, killing trash ads. Reload, get Volt Shot, change it. Just for consistency's sake, I mean, you can't go wrong with rerun rounds. And I like re-wang rounds for endgame, specifically because if you don't get kills, at least you're getting your ammo back, so you're not reloading as much. And then when you do reload, you get activate volt shot. I mean, obviously these do not go together. If you're going to honestly use the reloading, you could go rapid hit, bullet shot. So I'm not saying this is the best. My personal opinion is Firefly volt shot. I know that's not like Grandmaster. You're not proccing nearly as much, but honestly, volt shot is pretty good for doing some damage in end game. Scouts in general, unless you're a scout lover, I would not like encourage anyone to use a scout or use other better scouts. Rolling Storm is a trap. I think there's maybe one or two weapons I would suggest using it on, but I think Rolling Storm is overhyped. I'm sorry. Outside of abilities, unless you are building heavily into just using your ability, I would not waste a spot, especially in game, for a perk that does shit all for your gun. It does absolutely nothing for your gun, and I'm not using a scout rifle for utility. I'm sorry. So this gun is it's there to fit in the archetype of I don't have an arc scout for like surges or like a champion and whatever. I think this is an easy miss. There are better scout rifles, and in general, there are better arc weapons. What else do we have? We have Unloved. Boy, Unworthy. You know what's funny about these guns is that they're named in a way that explains their identity. Unloved, unworthy, unvoiced. These are weapons that should unexist. Let's actually go with the trace rifle. I think I was more excited for the trace rifle because of detonator beam, and it's another strand one, so it goes into your primary slot. Not primary, sorry, in the same spot as kinetic weapons, which is pretty nice. We have Incision, which this is pretty much Incision 2.0. If you already have Incision, there's no reason to farm this, especially if you have an adept one. If you don't have an adept one, here you go. You've got it. It has literally the same bacon. Has targets. It's missing slice. That's the only thing that's missing, but you have tear. But it's missing slice. I just, even with like bait and switch, rewind rounds, I've used detonator beam. I deleted it. I'm gonna be honest. I think it's not for single target damage. I just would rather use target lock. And for ad clear, like, who the fuck is using a trace rifle for ad clear? And I'm gonna say it. Back in the day, shoot to loot would have been like the go-to slot for those top-notch raiders who were doing the double specials. And that's the problem. I think trace rifles had more utility when double special was a strat. Now that that's been nerfed, I just don't think trace rifles are worth it, except for the new exotic one, which turns it into a primary or a arc primary. I'm not excited. Sure, it fits I'm not using trace rifles in in-game content. Maybe if there's like a champion mod that I have no other weapon or utility to, but like, let's be honest here. We're starting to get more synergies, like jolting feedback, things that can work against champions, to where we don't have to use champion mods anymore. And gun to my head, I'm not gonna fucking use a trace rifle in a Grandmaster or even Master content. It's just, they're fun, they're cool, but they act as if you're playing laser tag, and it's as effective as a laser tag. You touch something, but nothing happens. I'm sorry. People are getting hyped. I love like the red design, even though it's just literally a copy pasta of the same freaking model trace rifle we've had for 3-4 years already. Like, can we please get a new model of trace rifle? Like, for the love of God, you're literally putting new paint on it. outside of this, I'm not excited for it. Maybe there's some utility, but all these damage perks, and I'm just not excited. But gun to my head, shoot to loot, and maybe detonator beam. I'm not going to waste elemental honing. I'm not going to try to build into prismatic or a trace rifle. I'm sorry, I'd rather use something else. A hot swapping, I'm not excited about. Killing tally, again, I'm not using ad clear. It's not my jam. Target lock, maybe. You go rewind rounds, target lock. All reliable, maybe, like I said, for champions. I'm just, again, unsworn is not it. Then we have, let's see, let's save unloved. Let's go unvoiced. Let's just get this out of the way. Shotguns are not good outside of utility in PvP. Those are two different worlds we live in. For PvP, if you love slugs, you got closing time and lone wolf. Unless you really want killing wind for that distance. That's pretty much it. This thing gets destabilizing rounds and choose your poison. We already have the Root of Nightmares slug shotgun. I forgot what it's called. And just like how I forgot what it's called, it's also just been forgotten. Because when it came out, no one used it. I'm not using a shotgun for ad clear. The people who use shotguns for ad clear are the same people that use rockets for ad clear and raids. I'm sorry, no shade, but I'm being honest. Shotguns aren't good, except they used to be good for damage rotations or swapping, the slug shotgun rotation. And maybe in a world where you're using tractor cannon and that's kind of what you want to do. But even then, like right now, fusion rifles are kind of hot. And I would rather just use tractor fusion rifle. But once that particle deconstruction's out of the way and things return back to normal, tractor cannon, shotgun swap, you have bait and switch with Envious Arsenal. And I know that redirection got buffed, and it's a pretty significant buff. I don't think I would ever use redirection on anything but a primary, because you have to waste shots to build stacks, and it's just fucking, unless you're using a weapon specifically for ad clear, it's a waste of spot time. And I'm not using a shotgun for ad clear. If I'm going to use anything, it's going to be a sidearm rocket. Let's just be honest here. Or I'm going to use a aerial denial frame. Like you're better off using those two things for ad clear as a special than a shotgun, especially a slug shotgun. But for damage rotations, I mean, even Vorpal, you could just go the plain Jane 15%, no thoughts about it, or the hot swap. And I'm just thinking tractor cannon swaps. Outside of this, shotguns you are only good for like trench barrel and 1-2 punch, and that's it. And that's being generous. It's just shotguns are just kind of, here's the problem, especially in Grandmasters. If you are barrel stuffing an enemy, you're probably not using a shotgun outside of proccing 1-2 punch, and you're probably immediately nuking it as like a hunter or titan. You're nuking a champion or something, or a concentration slam, or whatever you're doing. You're just going full force to nuke it, because 9 out of 10 times, if you go up to something and try to shotgun it and you don't kill it, you're getting punched in the face and you're dying, especially if it's a champion. I'm sorry. If you're going to be that brave to go in person up front, high-end content, 9 out of 10 times, you're just going to nuke it with your abilities and not a shotgun. All right, last but not least, we have Unloved. I know, and I'm going to say this right now, I know people have done damage numbers. It's like one of them high, like heavy burst, or one of the highest DPS hand cannons. but I'm going to be honest. I have my Warden's Law and Vorpal, and I obviously 20% damage to bosses using Lucky Pants swaps. Outside of that, that's the only time I've ever cared for Heavy Burst. I just don't like it. Elemental Honing, if you're building with prismatic swaps, pop off. And I'm going to say right now, Hatchling is ass. Hatchling, and we're not talking about your public space area. I'm talking about in Grandmasters. One, if you manage to get a kill and proc Hatchling, you're just fondling the taint of an enemy. That's all you're doing. Hatchling sucks ass, and you only get one. It's one thing if you like spawn 3 or something, but for the utility of what it brings to the table, it's fucking ass. It's bad. And then you look at the rest of the perk selection, Outlaw, like Dragonfly, not even like Firefly, but we're getting Dragonfly, okay? Killing Wind, Heating Up. I mean, for PvP, you have Closing Time, I guess. I'm pretty sure we already have, no, we had an Arc. We have an Arc Heavy Burst. I'm sorry, I feel like Warden's Law is still better than this. Just in general for utility and for DPS against champions and bosses, I think Warden's Law is still the superior gun overall. And you can get it at depth. Unloved is not getting any love for me. I'm sorry. And I'm not using Tear on a primary hand cannon for utility. It's just, I feel like the third column is probably the most garbage set I've ever seen. But there's not much going on in the fourth column. The only thing that makes this like even feasible is the origin trait. Just the idea of weakening targets, exploding, and then severing. Like you could literally build into the sever. I don't know if it even stacks. Elemental Honing again is probably the most interesting. If you're using prismatic, you could get away with a wombo combo. But like if you're not doing that, Frenzy and Paracausal are the only thing. And if you're not using Strand, then you're down to Frenzy. And that's it. Like if you're using this and you're not using it to build into like some kind of synergistic thing, it's pretty bad. It is really, really bad. And I feel like they're just better Strand weapons. Not a lot, but there are definitely better Strand weapons to build in with. That's just my thought. And I feel like one of the biggest problems that I have with Strand weapons is that Hatchling is the only real damaging perk, and we just keep getting a bunch of defensive perks like Tear. And I would like to see something else besides Tear and Slice. All these keywords for Sever. And I would like to see Hatchling get pretty, like you have to get a precision kill or 3 kills within 3 seconds of each other. I'm sorry. I'm not excited about Heavy Burst outside of Warden's Law. Like, I'd just rather use Warden's Law. I'm being honest. Now, again, if you don't have Warden's Law and you don't have, like, I'm just saying we have so many good hand cannons. That's the problem. There's so many good hand cannons in the game. Like I just got them farming Fatebringer and it has double damage perks. It gets same thing as Elemental Honing, and then it can also get Osmosis. So you can have the perfect Strand weapon. You could also run Explosive Payload, Kinetic Tremors. Like you can really build into Fatebringer. Unloved kind of only it has a little bit of options. It's kind of like almost a one-trick pony. It's just Strand or go home. And I just don't like that for primaries. I'd rather use primaries that have more options than just a single use. Unless all you're doing is just using this to prime something. Maybe you're using it to prime Elemental Honing on your rocket or sniper. Well, you can't even use Praetifs, so it would just be Hezen's Vengeance right now. That's the only rocket that has. I don't know why you'd be using that when bait and switch exists. I don't know. I think that's all I can say about the dungeon weapons. They're They're okay if you don't have anything for the slots, but they're easily forgettable and replaceable. There's not a single gun that is meta, that is a must-have. Can you have fun with them? Absolutely. But if you're like me and you want to value your time, I'm going to tell you right now, you're better off chasing the heretical heresy weapons than you are the dungeon weapons, which is very rare because Revenant was not worth your time, whereas Vesper's Host was absolutely worth your time. So it's reversed. The dungeon's not worth your time, but the actual seasonal weapons are absolutely worth your time. Again, if you don't have a good slug shotgun, pop off. You don't have a good hand cannon, pop off. You love scouts, pop off. You're a trace rifle believer, pop off. But if we're talking about must-haves outside of maybe Unsworn being used for shoot to loot, end game, like swapping, picking up ammo, like for those 1%ers that are speed running, low manning. Outside of that, like there's nothing here that is a must-have. And that's my honest opinion. It's a shame. It's a shame. That's all I gotta say. It has a really cool origin perk, but that's about as exciting as it gets. I'm a gaming counselor. Again, I'm showing you and giving my opinion, so you don't have to waste your time farming for something that you could be farming for other things. Like alt glass, worth the farm. Dungeon, not so much. Until next time, don't forget to be the best version of yourself, and